Good evening, little masters, and welcome to episode 276 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where the hosts will suffer no living man to come to their hidden recording booths.
But at wilds we may ourselves be seen passing amongst the world of the living.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Folks, pull up a bench in the common room and join us. I'm James Tauber, the Sage of the South, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who seems greatly changed since I saw him first, Alan Sisto.
By which you surely mean only that I am grimmer and not older, James.
Yes, of course.
Good answer. Folks, join us as we listen to more legends about the paths of the dead and await the inevitable arrival of the Red Arrow in the second of 3 episodes on the Muster of Rohan, the 3rd chapter in The Return of the King, and not to be confused with the mayonnaise or ketchup of Rohan.
Yes, the condiments of Rohan. That's the trilogy. Folks, some of you are hearing this show for the very first time. To you, we bid you a warm welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading, talking, and often joking our way through Middle-earth, a few pages at a time.
Yeah, we take a deep dive into the lore, we explore how the story came to be, talk about our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
But in a light-hearted and fun way, like friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
And I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to visit This Week in Tolkien History.
Since this episode releases on January 22nd, we're looking at the week or so that surrounds that date.
Right.
Now, on January 21st, 1889, Edith Bratt was born in Gloucester. She was orphaned at the age of 14 and after finishing her schooling ended up at Mrs. Faulkner's boarding house in Birmingham, where she would eventually meet John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. Now, as many of you probably know, they fell in love, much to the concern of Ronald's guardian, Father Francis. Now, on January 21st, 1910, Edith's 21st birthday, Ronald and Edith met up, but this meeting was reported to Father Francis, who then forbade Ronald from having any contact or writing to Edith until he himself turned 21 3 years later.
Oh my. 3 years separated. When you're 18, that feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember really that long ago, but I remember thinking that it would feel like that. So
it was last millennium for you.
It was.
Alan.
It was.
Yeah.
It was the 20th century. And it was, yeah, you're right. It was only the 2nd millennium rather than the 3rd. It's been a while. Thanks for reminding me of that, James, who is not much younger than me. Now, of course, John, Ronald, and Edith did end up reuniting, thankfully. Tolkien waited until his 21st birthday dutifully to resume contact. Edith had, in the meantime, probably not surprisingly, gotten engaged to another man, but promptly called that off and accepted Tolkien's proposal. We should do a biography on that poor guy.
Yeah.
The guy who got dumped for Tolkien. Anyway, they were married in 1916.
So after some time at Leeds, Tolkien returned to Oxford as the Rawlinson and Bosworth Professor of Anglo-Saxon and will pick up in the late 1920s. January 22nd is generally around when the new term started, the Hilary term at Oxford. And it's fun to see what sort of classes Tolkien taught in that term each year. In 1927, Tolkien's classes included the Old English Exodus, Gothic, the verse in Sweet's Anglo-Saxon Reader, Old English Philology, covering morphology and vocabulary, Old Icelandic, the Volsunga Saga, and King Horn, textual and dialectical comparison of the manuscripts.
Oh, I am failing out of every one of those. I mean, I would want to take them, but my goodness, that's intimidating. So that was 27, but in 28, and again, the term started around this time. That's why we're doing it in This Week in Tolkien History, January 22nd. So in this term, in 28, Tolkien taught on Beowulf and the fight at Finnesburg, the prose in Sweet's Anglo-Saxon Reader, and on Germanic philology. Now, he continued to teach classes like this all the way into the 60s. We're not going to give you his, actual class list for the next 40 years. And of course, this time of year was also a very busy time for university bureaucracy. Interestingly, Skull and Hammond note plenty of committee meetings that Tolkien was absent from. Now, moving forward to 1931, on January 22nd, Tolkien wrote to Kenneth Sizem regarding the Clarendon Chaucer, vowing to complete the book before the summer if physically possible. But he says that work on it will have to be extracted from time normally given to sleep or study. So
Does that sound familiar, Alan?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, man, I feel you, Professor. I feel you. I'm supposed to complete a book. And it's pretty much going to have to come out of my sleep or my study. Yeah.
There you go. Now, that work, the Clarendon Chaucer, was never finished, but drafts of Tolkien's notes and commentary were recently found, and you can read more about them in John Bower's book, Tolkien's Lost Chaucer. So moving ahead to 1937, and in January, Tolkien was in the thick of discussions with Allen and Unwin about illustrations for The Hobbit. A few weeks earlier, he had sent Mirkwood, the Elven King's Gate, Lake Town, the Front Gate, and the 2 maps.
And on the 17th, Tolkien sent 6 more. He was busy. The Hill, Hobbiton Across the Water, very famous image. The Trolls, the Mountain Path, the Misty Mountains looking west from the Eyrie towards Goblin Gate, Beorn's Hall, the Hall at Bag End, residence of B. Baggins, Esquire. Now on the 23rd, Tolkien discussed Thror's map and his desire, I love this, to have the moon runes printed in reverse on the opposite side so that they would be visible if held up to the light. And he even drew a reversed copy of the runes for this exact purpose.
Amazing attention to detail. I don't think they were able to pull that off in the first edition, though, for cost reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, on January the 22nd, 1954, Tolkien sent Allen and Unwin corrected galley proofs for Book 3 of The Lord of the Rings. But Tolkien said he was not happy with the title The Two Towers. He didn't have a better suggestion, but he was worried that it was confusing.
Yeah.
In the context of Volume 2, it could only mean Orthanc and Cirith Ungol, whereas Minas Tirith versus Barad-dûr would make more sense, except that's really only true for Return of the King.
True.
And so we're left with the confusing name.
Which is still confusing. How many people have you run into who are like, so what are the 2 towers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was on January 22nd in 1965 that Austin Olney at Houghton Mifflin wrote to Rayner Unwin about the copyright issues in the US regarding Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yes. The famous Ace pirated editions, yeah.
Yes. So he suggested new editions be published to secure the copyrights in the US. But it did take a year. It wasn't until January 1966 that the issue was finally resolved.
Yeah, with Ace Books, I believe, agreeing to pay him some minuscule royalty.
Yes.
And then cease production. Well, a year later, in 1967, around this time, the finishing touches are being put on Donald Swan's The Road Goes Ever On, a song cycle. Tolkien is planning some contributions, but Rayner Unwin tells Houghton Mifflin that Tolkien's calligraphic hand is not so firm as it used to be, and whatever he does would have to be accurately redrawn, I suspect.
Now, do you know if they actually did use, is that Tolkien's hand in the
I always thought
book?
It was. I don't remember that letter, and yeah, my understanding is that
it still could be his, but I guess Rayner wasn't confident.
Maybe he wasn't
beforehand.
100% sure, given his advanced age, that it wasn't, where it had been, clearly. Certainly, if you look back maybe at the Father Christmas letters, you might be able to detect some differences. But to me, it's fantastic. I absolutely love his calligraphy in The Road Goes Ever On, a book I strongly suggest you buy if you don't already have it. And of course, we'll make sure that there are links in the show notes to that page in our library. Now, a year later, this time in 1968, around this time, Donald Swan and his wife stayed at the Hotel Miramar in Bournemouth with Tolkien and Edith. Swan apparently gave a solo performance on the piano that Tolkien described to Rayner Unwin as astonishing.
Now, on January 24th, 1972, Tolkien wrote to his son Michael, telling him Merton College was going to make him a residential fellow, offering him a set of rooms at a college house in Merton Street for him to live in. But he says in the letter, "I do not feel quite real or whole, and in a sense there is no one to talk to. I still often find myself thinking, I must tell E about this. And then suddenly I feel like a castaway left on a barren island under a heedless sky after the loss of a great ship." This was, of course, less than 2 months after Edith's passing on November 29th, 1971.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, reading those letters, in that first, well, really for the rest of his life, because he did only live another couple of years until 1973. But yeah, the letters that he wrote, especially to his sons, they're always moving and powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deeply sad.
And of course, that letter would have been written just a couple of days after the first what would have been her birthday.
Yeah, that's true.
The first birthday that...
first of her birthdays that he would have spent without her.
Yeah. Well, with that, sorry to bring the mood down. It's time to get back to the story as Merry and company see a rider coming out to meet them. Who might that be, I wonder?
The rider of mystery.
Alan, can you pick up where we left off last week?
Indeed I can, James. Thank you. As they drew near, Mary saw that the rider was a woman with long braided hair, gleaming in the twilight. Yet she wore a helm and was clad to the waist like a warrior and girded with a sword. "Hail, Lord of the Mark," she cried. "My heart is glad at your returning." "And you, Éowyn," said Théoden, "is all well with you?" "All is well," she answered, yet it seemed to Mary that her voice belied her, and he would have thought that she had been weeping, if that could be believed of one so stern of face. "All is well. It was a weary road for the people to take, torn suddenly from their homes. There were hard words, for it is long since war has driven us from the green fields, but there have been no evil deeds. All is now ordered, as you see, and your lodging is prepared for you, for I have had full tidings of you, and knew the hour of your coming." "So Aragorn has come then," said Éomer. "Is he still here?" "No, he is gone," said Éowyn, turning away and looking at the mountains dark against the east and south. "Whither did he go?" asked Éomer. "I do not know," she answered. "He came at night, and rode away yestermorn, ere the sun had climbed over the mountain tops. He is gone." "You are grieved, daughter," said Théoden. "What has happened? Tell me, did he speak of that road?" He pointed away along the darkening lines of stones towards the Dwimmerberg. "Of the paths of the dead?" "Yes, Lord," said Éowyn. "And he has passed into the shadow from which none have returned. I could not dissuade him. He is gone." "Then our paths are sundered," said Éomer. "He is lost. We must ride without him, and our hope dwindles." Well, I guess, James, you really didn't bring the mood down by talking about all that, because we're starting in a pretty somber place, aren't we?
Yeah. Now, we open this episode with Merry's first encounter with Éowyn. How does he see her? It's described as her hair is long and braided and gleaming. She's wearing a helm, armor, and a sword.
Yeah, that must strike Mary as being a little unexpected. Not necessarily out of place per se, but a bit of a surprise. And of course, he also sees her as stern of face. We see that actually in the next little bit. But this is when she greets Théoden with joy, and he responds by asking her if all is well. Now, I find this interesting. It's clear she really does have joy for seeing Théoden.
Yes.
But that doesn't last very long. As he begins to ask questions, you can sort of see that facade coming down, right? She says that things are fine, but Mary's not so sure. He's pretty perceptive here. She looks like she has been crying, weeping.
Yeah. So she responds to Théoden by bringing him up to date on the process of getting folks here. It hasn't been an easy thing. People are being taken from their homes. And it's been a long time since war has demanded this of our people, she says.
It's a huge sacrifice, no doubt. But thankfully, nobody's done anything evil, right? There hasn't been, open rebellion against the king's orders to come here. Nothing bad. They're all here and they're all prepared. And by the way, your tent is also prepared because I had news of your coming. Yeah.
Yep. Now, we want to take a moment to read an earlier version of this passage as found in the War of the Ring, History of Middle-earth, Volume 8. Recall last week when we had that tender moment of Théoden referring to Éomer as his son, and the history of Éomer and Éowyn and their adoption by the king after the death of their parents. There's a sense of that in this older version of the text that starts out very similar to the final text. "It was a long, weary road for the people to take from their homes, and there were many hard words, but no evil deeds. Then hardly had we come to Dunharrow and ordered ourselves when tidings came of your victory and the fall of Isengard. There was great rejoicing, though I thought the tale had grown as it travelled along the road, until Aragorn came back as he promised."
Now, I like the similarities, and then this is where it changes, because in that draft, Aragorn is actually still there, too. Regardless, though, and this is the part I wanted us to get to here, Éowyn continues, and this is just such a beautiful moment. But all have missed you, Lord, especially in the hour of victory. It is overshadowed now by new fear, yet not dimmed altogether. Tonight all are preparing the feast, for you do not come unexpected. Aragorn named the very hour at which we might look for you, and behold, you come. She clasped his hand. Now I will admit, Théoden, brother of my mother, that it is beyond any hope I had when you rode away. This is a glad hour. Hail, Lord of the Mark! May I never again be taken from your side while you live still and rule the Eorlingas. Father you are to me, since Eothane my father fell at Osgiliath far away. Come now, all is prepared for you, and though Dunharrow is a dark place, full of sad shadow, tonight it shall be filled with lights. Oh, I love that. I love that. May I never again be taken from your side. Father you are to me. So amazing.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Aragorn, Éomer correctly assumes he's the source of the tidings and asks if he's still there.
Yeah. Now, Éowyn, not very discreetly, looks towards the Dwimmerberg, right? It's not named, but that's exactly where she's looking, at the mountains dark against the east and south. So he says, he's gone. Just kind of nodding her head that direction. Came at night, which is 2 nights ago, and then left yesterday morning.
And Théoden, again, very perceptively acknowledges her grief and asks what has happened, specifically if he spoke of that road, the paths of the dead.
Yeah.
And Éowyn says he's gone into the shadow from which none have returned.
She also mentions, I thought this was interesting, that she did try to dissuade him, right? I could not dissuade him. She kind of understates the effort she made. Dissuade, persuade, argue, beg, plead, anything, but she was unsuccessful in that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Éomer sees this with just as much finality as we saw in the previous chapter as well.
Yeah. Then we're done, sir.
Yeah.
Bye. It's nice knowing you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gone. We have to ride without him. And sadly, as he observes, and he's right, it lessens the hope that we might have. Our hope dwindles. Let's talk about that for a little bit. The loss of hope for the Rohirrim, having lost not just Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas like in the films, but remember, they've lost a lot more than that. They've lost those 3 plus Elladan and Elrohir and 30 Rangers, a pretty substantial fighting force.
Yeah, and given who they were, obviously significant.
Each one of them worth, a half dozen ordinary fighters, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's also interesting that Éowyn sort of somewhat restrained in her description.
Yeah.
She attempted to dissuade him. There's nothing of the sort of begging to go with Aragorn or any of that aspect of it.
No, she does not mention that at all. And I wonder, is that because she doesn't want to necessarily reveal to Théoden just how much she feels for him, or is this just classic understatement? I don't want to make a big deal of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I get the impression Théoden can tell.
Oh, he can. You are grieved, daughter. He knows.
Yeah.
He knows very much. Boy, it is a heartbreaking thing here. But yeah, Théoden, for all intents and purposes, her dad. She was 7 when her biological parents died and he adopted them. She and Éomer, who was 11 at the time. So, he's known her for, at this point, I don't know exactly how old she is, but, presumably for 15 to 20 years, right? She's got to be, somewhere in that early to mid 20s, I would imagine. But boy, what a moment that is. Well, we'll take a look at that moment and a little bit more when we come back from the break. Now, before we get back to the text and that dwindling hope of the Rohirrim, we want to make sure you know that even after you've listened to the episode, there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast. Follow the page to get the news and our episode releases, but be sure to join the group to get involved in some really great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter and Instagram, We're simply at Prancing Pony Pod.
And please be sure to check out the Rings of Power Wrap-Up. Now, that's my new podcast with Sarah Brown and some guy named James Tauber, I don't remember. Where we discuss, analyze, and speculate all about Amazon's television adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth.
Alan, Sarah, and I take deep dives into the lore behind the show, or the lore that should be behind the show, talk about themes and characters, and interview folks involved with the show. So look for the Rings of Power Wrap-Up and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And check at Rings Wrap-Up on social media for more.
Okay, for now, though, let's go ahead and get back to the story. Before we do, though, just a quick fix or addendum. Éowyn is about 24 at this point, depending on when her birthday falls in relation to the date that we're at now, but she was born 24 years before 3019. So that means that Théoden has known her as his daughter, essentially, for 17 years. So certainly he's tuned in enough, empathetic enough to observe that she is indeed grieving. But James, can you go ahead and pick up where I left off? And we're going to get to Merry's perspective, I think.
Absolutely. Slowly they passed through the short heath and upland grass, speaking no more, until they came to the king's pavilion. There Merry found that everything was made ready, and that he himself was not forgotten. A little tent had been pitched for him beside the king's lodging, and there he sat alone, while men passed to and fro, going in to the king and taking counsel with him. Night came on, and the half-seen heads of the mountains westward were crowned with stars, but the east was dark and blank. The marching stones faded slowly from sight, but still beyond them, blacker than the gloom, brooded the vast, crouching shadow of the Duimorberg. "The paths of the dead," he muttered to himself. "The paths of the dead! What does all this mean? They have all left me now. They have all gone to some doom. Gandalf and Pippin to war in the east, and Sam and Frodo to Mordor, and Strider and Legolas and Gimli to the paths of the dead. But my turn will come soon enough, I suppose. I wonder what they are all talking about, and what the king means to do, for I must go where he goes now." In the midst of these gloomy thoughts, he suddenly remembered that he was very hungry, and he got up to go and see if anyone else in this strange camp felt the same. But at that very moment, a trumpet sounded, and a man came summoning him, the king's esquire, to wait at the king's board.
Oh, man, what a passage there. I love Merry's thought process there, right? The muttering to himself. We'll get to that in a minute, but let's go back to the beginning. As the king and his small company ride through the grass to the pavilion, that's when we switch again, as we often do, to Merry's perspective. But he does find that he wasn't forgotten, right? He has his own little tent, his own little hobbit-sized little dwelling beside the king's. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, I love this contrast between this sort of the status that he is being afforded, whether when it was riding next to Théoden, now it's this tent being set up. But at the same time, he's sitting there alone. This is so foreign to him. Yeah, he's waiting. He doesn't really know what's going on. People are going in and out from the king's tent. It's really quite sad.
It really is. You're right. I mean, he gets this special treatment because he's the king's esquire, but then as a result, he's sitting there by himself. Nobody there. And I think that's one of the things that prompts him to end up thinking about what he thinks about. But we'll get there. This is the moment that we see night truly come on, and we start to get a hint of the dawnless day that's going to be coming in the morning as the mountains to the west have stars visible above, but the east is dark, and that darkness will be spreading.
Yeah. And speaking of darkness, Merry notes the stones fading off towards the black shadow of the haunted mountain.
Yeah.
And he mutters to himself about the paths of the dead.
Now, we observed last week how lonely he felt, right? We talked about how he felt so lonely. Now he's feeling isolated on top of that loneliness, right? I mean, that's even different. That's like another level of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Gandalf and Pippin have gone to Minas Tirith and war. Frodo and Sam to Mordor. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, of course, to the paths of the dead.
Now, interestingly, note that each of those three breakdowns, Gandalf and Pippin, Frodo and Sam, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, none of those people are by themselves.
Yeah.
Merry is the only one who has been left as the sole member of the original fellowship. And I want to kind of hang out here a little bit and talk about what that might have done to Merry's mindset, right? I mean, he's the only one of the 9 who's still by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is quite shocking that everyone else at least has one person there with, that they, in some cases more, but yeah, he doesn't have anyone to talk to about this.
Right. I mean, he's truly alone.
Yeah.
Pippin feels alone, but at least Gandalf is there. I mean, honestly, if you're Pippin, probably the last one you want to be stuck alone with is Gandalf. But it's it's a tough call. But Frodo and Sam have each other, and then the 3 hunters are still together. But Merry is all by himself.
Yeah.
And my goodness.
I love the shift in his thinking here when he realizes it's going to be his turn soon. His turn for what? He doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
For truly he doesn't. I mean, it's for danger, to face death, because that's what the others have done.
Yeah.
Right? The war, Mordor, Paths of the Dead, whatever it is.
Yeah. All of it's dangerous. Yeah.
But he understands that he has a role to play here too, that it is going to be his turn. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. He doesn't know exactly what it's going to be, but he knows it's going to involve Théoden, because Théoden's decision is going to determine what his next step is going to be, because he knows I've got to go with him. But then I love this. I almost laughed out loud when he read this, that at the very, in the midst of all this, he remembered he was very hungry. So hobbity, such a hobbity turn of events. Merry goes, oh yeah, wait, I'm hungry.
But coincidentally, he's been summoned as the king's esquire to wait at the king's table.
Yeah, not to eat yet, but to wait.
Yet. So, Alan, do you want to continue reading from that point?
I do. I'm going to skip a couple of paragraphs because, again, we can't read everything, and I'll pick up as Merry makes his way to the table. Room was made for the hobbit at the king's left hand, but no one called for any tale. There was indeed little speech, and they ate and drank for the most part in silence, until at last, plucking up courage, Merry asked the question that was tormenting him. "Twice now, Lord, I have heard of the paths of the dead," he said. "What are they? And where is Strider, I mean the Lord Aragorn, where is he gone?" The king sighed, but no one answered, until at last Éomer spoke. "We do not know, and our hearts are heavy," he said. "But as for the paths of the dead, you have yourself walked on their first steps. Nay, I speak no words of ill omen. The road that we have climbed is the approach to the door, yonder in the dim hold. But what lies beyond, no man knows." "No man knows," said Théoden, "yet ancient legend, now seldom spoken, has somewhat to report. If these old tales speak true that have come down from father to son in the house of Éowyn, then the door under Dwemerberg leads to a secret way that goes beneath the mountain to some forgotten end. But none have ever ventured in to search its secrets, since Baldur, son of Brego, passed the door and was never seen among men again. A rash vow he spoke as he drained the horn at that feast which Brego made to hallow new-built Medgiseld, and he came never to the high seat of which he was the heir. Folk say that dead men out of the dark years guard the way, and will suffer no living man to come to their hidden halls, but at whiles they may themselves be seen passing out of the door like shadows, and down the stony road. Then the people of Harrowdale shut fast their doors, and shroud their windows, and are afraid. But the dead come seldom forth, and only at times of great unquiet and coming death." "Yet it is said in Harrowdale," said Éowyn in a low voice, "that in the moonless nights but little while ago a great host in strange array passed by. Whence they came none knew, but they went up the stony road and vanished into the hill as if they went to keep a tryst." And that's where we'll stop for now.
Yeah. So in the part we didn't read, Merry finds a small table in an inner part of Théoden's tent. And at the table, Théoden, Éomer, Éowyn, and Dunhedder. Merry stands beside the king and waits on him.
And Théoden, thinking hard about something, right, turns to Merry and smiles and invites him to sit down and tell tales. And that's where we picked up the reading.
Yeah, except there's no call for a tale. Merry sits there and there's very little talk at all.
Mm-hmm.
Until Merry decides finally to ask the questions that have been bothering him. What are the paths of the dead? Where has Aragorn gone?
Oh, my. There is a long, awkward silence before Éomer answers the second question first, which is, we don't know. And we're really sad about that. We really have some sorrow that Aragorn is gone. Then he answers as much of the first question as he can. You've been walking on those paths yourself. No, don't worry. You're not in the paths of the dead. You're on the road to the paths of the dead, the approach to the door in the dim hold. But we don't know what's beyond that.
Yeah. And that leaves Théoden with the task of telling Merry about the ancient legends. First with disclaimers, if they speak true, and now it's seldom spoken.
Mm-hmm.
The door leads to a secret passage under the mountains with a forgotten destination. No one has gone in to find its secrets since Baldur went in and was never seen again.
And that was quite a while ago, because Baldur was the son of Brego. Brego was the son of Eorl. So we're talking about the second king of the Mark.
Right.
So it's been quite a while. We talked about him last chapter, right? Swearing that rash vow at the feast to celebrate the completion of Medjugorje. So that would have been, well, let's see, Brego became king in 2545. So it was a few years later than that. Now, a real quick aside on the names of Brego and Baldur. Brego is simply Old English for lord or ruler. Perhaps not surprisingly, so is Baldur, but the meaning there also comes from bald or beald, which means bold, courageous, or honorable.
So Théoden continues telling the legend of the paths of the dead, leading with a some say moment that the dead men guard that secret way, and that no living person can enter their domain. But they themselves can pass through the door and wander the road, and the people of Harrowdale react quite reasonably in fear when that happens.
Dead guys are around. I'm going to close the door now.
Yeah, exactly. They're out on the roads again.
Hey, did you see the dead men again? Lock the door, would you? Yeah, I get it completely. Unfortunately, it is rare. This doesn't happen very often. Théoden says this happens only at times of great unquiet and coming death. Coming soon to a theater near you. Death. Éowyn responds with a really eerie observation, right? This has just happened, right? The great host in strange array. So clearly, just such a time is happening now. This must be a time of great unquiet and coming death. I think I want to talk about this a little bit, but not too much, because we have a question in the bag that we'll touch on this. But let's chat a little bit about the great host in strange array and what this means for the times that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting from the point of view of what the characters in this chapter would think of the event, as opposed to what we might interpret it as, given what we know. Because, of course, people like Merry and Éowyn and so on don't have necessarily the same picture that we do of what's going on there.
Yeah, this is a spooky time. And, of course, Éowyn didn't see the great host in strange array, but that's what's been reported to her from the folks here in Harrowdale. So one can imagine, as she's bringing all the folks in, the folks who live there in Under Harrow and Upbourne are telling her, hey, they were at it again the other day. The dead guys, they were out and about wandering. We'll talk more about that in the bag section tonight, so I don't want to go too much further for now. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and have you pick up exactly where we left off.
Sure.
All right, James, thank you.
Then why has Aragorn gone that way? Asked Merry. Don't you know anything that would explain it? Unless he has spoken words to you as his friend that we have not heard, said Éomer, none now in the land of the living can tell his purpose. Greatly changed he seemed to me since I saw him first in the king's house, said Éowyn. Grimmer, older, fey I thought him, and like one whom the dead call. Maybe he was called, said Théoden, and my heart tells me that I shall not see him again. Yet he's a kingly man of high destiny. And take comfort in this, daughter, since comfort you seem to need in your grief for this guest. It is said that when the Eorlingas came out of the north and passed at length up the Snowbourne, seeking strong places of refuge in times of need, Brego and his son Baldur climbed the stair of the hold, and so came before the door. On the threshold sat an old man, aged beyond guess of years, Tall and kingly he had been, but now he was withered as an old stone. Indeed, for stone they took him, for he moved not, and he said no word, until they sought to pass him by and enter. And then a voice came out of him, as if it were out of the ground, and to their amaze it spoke in the Western tongue. The way is shut. Then they halted and looked at him, and saw that he lived still, but he did not look at them. The way is shut, his voice said again. It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it until the time comes. The way is shut. And when will that time be? Said Baldur. But no answer did he ever get, for the old man died in that hour, and fell upon his face. And no other tidings of the ancient dwellers in the mountains have our folk ever learned. Yet maybe at last the time foretold has come, and Aragorn may pass.
Oh my. Yeah, and maybe he won't. I mean, so going back to the beginning of that passage, Mary does ask a pretty reasonable question, given what Théoden has just said about the paths of the dead. Why in the world would Aragorn go there if that's the case?
And I love Amy's response. He basically says, we have no idea. Maybe he's told you, Mary, he's your friend.
Yeah. I mean, Mary, Aragorn has been your friend longer than he's been ours. So maybe he's told you, sadly, we've got no clue. Here's a question that we've never gotten in the mailbag. So I'm going to ask it myself and we can talk about this. Why didn't Aragorn explain things to Théoden and Éomer at the least? Right. I mean, look, it was no secret to them that he's the rightful king of Gondor. So talking about having the dead fulfill their oath wouldn't have meant spilling important secrets. Why be so secretive about this? What does this accomplish strategically? And might it have been a better choice to tell somebody so that they don't lose so much hope?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Is he just so taken back by what he has to do that he doesn't even think about telling anybody else?
Is it he doesn't want to burden them with it as well? Yeah.
Maybe. Is it a risk that somehow if he tells them, somehow Sauron might find out? Like if they get captured by orcs or... I don't know.
Yeah. It's not clear at all.
Yeah, it's one of those things where maybe, and I don't want to question Aragorn because Book Aragorn is incredibly wise, very confident in his role as leader. He's not, always filled with doubt at his own questions. But Book Aragorn here, you almost think that the better decision would be, hey, you can't talk about this, but I'm going to take the paths of the dead because, well, I'm the heir of Isildur, so they will respond to me. Yeah. And I need to use the army of the dead to go to the south of Gondor and stop the fleets from invading. So please have some hope, right? I mean, maybe. I
also wonder if it's, has to do with the way Éowyn describes the changes that she saw in him.
Yes.
She says that he was grimmer and older and fey.
Oh, and that is a big word in Tolkien, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so I can't help but wonder whether that's relevant to this question of why he didn't share more.
That may be too. Yeah. Maybe in a way he doesn't want to tell them because he doesn't want to give them false hope. He knows there's a very strong likelihood that he won't make it through the paths of the dead, but it's his only chance. It's the only way for he and Gondor to win this war.
Yep.
Otherwise Gondor will certainly fall.
Yep.
It's just one of those things, what if? Would have been nice to see him throw a bone Théoden's way and just say, yeah, by the way, man, you just need to know. I mean, you're the king and all. You should know what's happening. We'll try to meet you on the other side of the Pelennor fields. Well, anyway, much of this grimmer, older, and fey stuff that you mentioned, I think we would have chalked up maybe to his confrontation with Sauron and the Palantir, because we saw a lot of that in Helm's Deep when they'd stopped there on the way, and he was there with Halbarad. I keep wanting to say Halbrand. He was there with Halbarad, and he comes out, and everybody's commenting on the narrative comments as well on how he looks, and he's very worn down. And the moment that he looks better is when he finally makes the decision to do this, right? And that's when things change. So it's that confrontation with Sauron was one thing. I think maybe some of this is also caused by the understanding of what he's about to face. He's about to go in and face death quite literally. Not his own death, but death itself, right? He's going to go in and face these dead people. And yeah, I think that alone would make you a little grimmer, a little fair, a little older.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure. And the other thing that Éowyn says is that the look on him was like one whom the dead call.
Oh, that close to death, right? I mean, he's
Right.
on death's door, maybe is another way of putting this.
Yeah, exactly. And Théoden doesn't dispute that. He even acknowledges that he doesn't think he'll ever see Aragorn again. Although I wonder how much of that's his own fae versus Aragorn's
That's
fae,
a good
right?
point, because, I mean, we know that that's true. He's not going to see Aragorn again, but not because Aragorn dies.
Right.
It's a really sad moment there, sort of a little glimpse at what's going to happen. But I like how Théoden points out Aragorn is a kingly man of high destiny. I think, what he's saying here is this experience, this thing that we think is certain death to everybody else, this may well be something that Aragorn survives because he is fated to do something great. And so I think that does maybe suggest what you said, that this is more about his own fae than Aragorn being fae, right? I think Théoden knows he's riding to his death.
Yeah. But then he, as we talked about before, he's sensed that Éowyn has some feelings for Aragorn and offers her comfort by telling her a story that ends with the possibility that the time is right.
Yeah.
And it begins with another, some say, moment that Brego and Baldur came up here to the hold and took the road to the door.
That's right. And that's where they encountered this old man, right? So old that they thought he was a statue. And when they tried to pass, he spoke. And it's interesting that he spoke with a voice as if out of the ground. And we'll get to that in just a second. But that's when he says that famous quote, and I love it, "The way is shut. It was made by those who are dead, and the dead keep it until the time comes. The way is shut." Ooh. Chills, just chills.
Yep.
Yeah.
Until the time comes. And Baldur, of course, asks what that time will be.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get an answer because the man dies. Right there. That's the moment that the man chooses to, well, maybe not chooses, but that's the moment the man dies.
Yeah.
But of course, maybe, just maybe, the time has come now. And Aragorn can pass.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think if I'm Théoden telling that story, I lead with that, because he takes a long time to get to.
Yes.
You want some comfort, Éowyn? Let me tell you some comfort. The way is shut. It was made by those who are dead, right? I mean, this is, the police calling to say that, your family member has been in a terrible car accident, but they are still alive. Can you please lead with that first?
Yes, exactly.
So let's get to this old man of the myth. I want to talk about this. In an earlier version of the story in The War of the Ring, we read something that has sparked my interest here. And this is a previous draft. And I know here the man is tall and the man looks kingly, but listen to this. "There sat an old man, aged beyond count of years, withered as old stone. Very like to the Púkelmen he was, as he sat upon the threshold of the dark door." And we read then that Brego, who was at that version of the story still called Bregu, and Baldur had initially taken him as an image of the statues such as stood at the turnings of the stair. Now, I don't know about you, but the idea of a Púkelman standing there, a living Púkelman, explaining this story, really reminds me of the tale of the faithful stone.
Yes. In the chapter on the Druidine in Unfinished Tales, sure you'll cover it at length, probably reading most of it.
Probably.
When you get to Gamburigan in a couple of chapters.
Definitely.
But a quick preview. The basic gist of that story is that a Drug named Aragorn set up a watchstone to watch after his friend, a man named Barak, while he left to help his brother. During the night, orcs came and tried to set Barak's house on fire. As he went to try to shoot the orcs, he saw a Drug come up and knock one of the orcs down and stomp out the fire with his bare feet. Barak went out later and saw the watchstone was gone. When Aragorn returned and Barak told him what happened... let's save the cool ending for when you
get there. Thank you for not spoiling that really cool story. That is a great story. But you could totally see why the idea of this old man by the door being one of the Pukul men really made me think of the faithful stuff, especially the voice, that sort of deeper voice that we kind of imagine the Droogs speaking with. But in the part we didn't read, right, we had to skip a couple paragraphs at the end of your passage. Éomer points out the obvious. There isn't a sign flashing in neon. The time has come. The time has come. I mean, the only way Aragorn is going to find out if the time has come is by trying to go through. And if he's wrong, he dies.
Right. Also, I wouldn't go that way even if I was facing certain death in combat.
Yeah, Éomer's like, I don't care. I don't care. I would rather die against all the foes of, against all of Sauron's armies than try to go in there. And he, mistakenly, I might add, assumes that Aragorn's fey mood was what drove him to the paths of the dead. But I think it was the need to go through those paths that made Aragorn fey.
Yeah. Why go looking for trouble in caves when there's plenty to fight elsewhere?
Yeah, Éomer's a very practical guy. Yeah.
Then the conversation stops as they overhear someone calling for Théoden.
Yes, they do.
Would you like to pick up from there, Alan?
I will. Presently, the captain of the guard thrust aside the curtain. "A man is here, lord," he said. "An errand rider of Gondor. He wishes to come before you at once." "Let him come," said Théoden. A tall man entered, and Merry choked back a cry. For a moment it seemed to him that Boromir was alive again and had returned. Then he saw that it was not so. The man was a stranger, though as like to Boromir as if he were one of his kin, tall and gray-eyed and proud. He was clad as a rider, with a cloak of dark green over a coat of fine mail. On the front of his helm was wrought a small silver star. In his hand he bore a single arrow, black-feathered and barbed with steel, but the point was painted red. He sank on one knee and presented the arrow to Théoden. "Hail, Lord of the Rohirrim, friend of Gondor," he said. "Hirgon I am, errand rider of Denethor, who bring you this token of war. Gondor is in great need. Often the Rohirrim have aided us, but now the Lord Denethor asks for all your strength and all your speed, lest Gondor fall at last." "The red arrow," said Théoden, holding it as one who receives a summons long expected and yet dreadful when it comes. His hand trembled. "The red arrow has not been seen in the mark in all my years. Has it indeed come to that?" And we'll stop there just because we want to talk about that arrival before we get into the details of this conversation with Hirgon.
Absolutely. So the captain of Théoden's guard enters and announces that an errand rider of Gondor has arrived and wishes to see him immediately. Of course, the king says yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that carries a little significance, I'm sure. Well, as we know, right? A summons long expected. He knew this was coming. He just didn't know when.
Yeah.
So when this, errand rider comes in, we get to experience his arrival through Merry's eyes. And of course, he nearly cries out because the man reminds Merry of Boromir. Right? He's tall, he's proud, he's got these gray eyes. He looks just like Boromir.
Yeah. And we're given this wonderful visual description of his gear: a dark green cloak, mail coat, a helm with a silver star. Beautiful. And he's carrying one arrow, steel barbed with black feathers and a red painted tip.
Oh my goodness. Powerful symbol, right? As he comes before Théoden, he kneels to the king. He introduces himself as Hirgon, but not before reminding the Lord of the Mark that he is a friend of Gondor. Hey, by the way, don't forget you're a friend of Gondor. And then he speaks of the need of Gondor, which is specifically all your strength and all your speed. And we'll get to that in the next passage.
Yeah, it's funny. Before you ask somebody for a favor, you remind them, "You're my friend."
Exactly. "Hey, James, my friend, would you be interested in co-hosting some episodes of the Prancing Pony podcast?"
That's exactly what you did. Now I know where you got it from.
That's right. Oh, man.
But yeah, I mean, he declares the stakes here, right? That Gondor might fall. And Théoden holds the red arrow, identifying it for us as the reader as well.
Yeah, that is a nice little subtle moment of exposition, the red arrow, capitalizing it, making it a significant thing.
Yes.
The text makes it clear it's something that he clearly expected and yet at the same time was dreading, right? And we can identify with that. Maybe not with this particular thing, but with the concept of expecting and dreading something at the same time. Maybe it's just our taxes. I don't know. Théoden's hand trembles as he observes aloud that this red arrow has not been seen during his reign. And that's almost 40 years at this point, by the way.
Yeah. And in fact, there's nothing in the Legendarium that tells us the last time it was used.
Yeah.
There's
I looked, believe me.
Yeah. There's speculation that its origins lie back in the day when Cirion called on the Northmen for help. In the section of Unfinished Tales on Cirion and Eorl, we read about Cirion asking for volunteers to ride the nearly 1,000 miles to the Vales of Anduin. And choosing 6 riders of great courage and endurance, he sent them out in pairs with a day's interval between them. Each bore a message learned by heart and also a small stone incised with the seal of the stewards that he should deliver to the Lord of the Eortheod in person if he succeeded in reaching that land.
Now, of course, only one of those 6 made it. And we read this. He was Borondir, a great rider of a family that claimed descent from a captain of the Northmen in the service of the kings of old. Of the others, no tidings were ever heard, save of Borondir's companion. He was slain by arrows in ambush as they passed near Dol Guldur, from which Borondir escaped by fortune and the speed of his horse. He came at last to the Eortheod after 15 days, for the last 2 without food, and he was so spent that he could scarce speak his message to Eorl. Now, there are some readers who believe that Borondir took one of the arrows that slew his companion and presented it to Eorl as an indication of the need of Gondor, and that would explain the black feathers, because it would have been an orc arrow. And this would have been an indication of the need of Gondor. I cannot find any evidence in the text that this actually happened, but it certainly makes sense. It's logical. It fits the story. I wouldn't be surprised if this was where it began, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah. Now, Hammond and Skull suggest that Tolkien was inspired by William Morris here, referencing A Tale of the House of the Wolflings, in which the Wolflings are called to war against Rome by a messenger carrying the token of the war arrow, ragged and burnt and bloody.
I love that. Yeah, Hammond and Skull mention that. They don't mention this, but I think this might also be a possible connection. Cynewulf. Now, we know that Tolkien read Cynewulf as it was a line from Crist by Cynewulf that inspired The Last Voyage of Eärendil, right? If Sean were here, he would read that in Old English for us. But Tolkien was also almost certain to be familiar with Cynewulf's Elene, an Old English poem known as Saint Helena Finds the True Cross. In this poem, we read that the emperor, talking about Constantine at this point, straightway bade summon with the greatest speed by dispatch of the arrow his heroes to war against the foes. So clearly sending the arrow as a symbol of, the need of alliance, the need of your help, is something that goes way, way back. But whatever his source of inspiration, the meaning is clear, right? I mean, there's no questioning what this means, even without that history, even if it is a bit of a textual ruin. Yeah. I love it. It is a textual ruin. And we always try to kind of dig out the textual ruins and try to find out where they come from, but sometimes we don't, and that's okay too. All right, James, you want to go ahead and pick up right after Théoden has sort of recognized it for what it is and asked, has it really come to that? He's got a key question for Hirgon, doesn't he?
And what does the Lord Denethor reckon that all my strength and all my speed may be? That is best known to yourself, Lord, said Hirgon. But ere long it may well come to pass that Minas Tirith is surrounded, and unless you have the strength to break a siege of many powers, the Lord Denethor bids me say that he judges that the strong arms of the Rohirrim would be better within his walls than without. But he knows that we are a people who fight rather upon horseback and in the open, and that we are also a scattered people, and time is needed for the gathering of our riders. Is it not true, Hirgon, that the Lord of Minas Tirith knows more than he sets in his message? For we are already at war, as you may have seen, and you do not find us all unprepared. Gandalf the Grey has been among us, and even now we are mustering for battle in the east. What the Lord Denethor may know or guess of all these things I cannot say, answered Harrowdale. But indeed our case is desperate. My lord does not issue any command to you. He begs you only to remember old friendship and oaths long spoken, and for your own good to do all that you may. It is reported to us that many kings have ridden in from the east to the service of Mordor. From the north to the field of Dagorlad, there is skirmish and rumour of war. In the south, the Harrowdale are moving, and fear has fallen on all our coastlands, so that little help will come to us thence. Make haste, for it is before the walls of Minas Tirith that the doom of our time will be decided. And if the tide be not stemmed there, then it will flow over all the fair fields of Rohan, and even in this hold among the hills there shall be no refuge.
Indeed. So after recognizing it for what it is and hearing Hirgon's request, Théoden starts out by trying to get a clearer understanding, right, of the need, but also the expectations, right? What does Denethor think all my strength is? What does he think all my speed is? Important questions.
Yeah, they're important questions. After all, it takes time to gather strength. If speed is more important than numbers, maybe leave now with half the strength. If there's a bit more time, then Théoden can gather more forces for more strength. That's
a good point. I mean, there is a sweet spot, so to speak, where maybe you've got 96% of your strength and it would take another week to get the balance. But, the idea is that if it's happening right now, we got to go with what we've got, and we can't even wait 24 hours. But if we can wait, we can gather a lot more strength. Hirgon doesn't provide specifics. I suspect he can't provide specifics. He just knows that very soon Minas Tirith is likely to be surrounded and besieged. And he tells Théoden, look, unless your forces are strong enough to break a really big siege, you're better off inside the city than outside of it.
Yeah. But Théoden reminds him it takes time to bring our riders out together. And we're actually a cavalry force, so being stuck within the city may not be best.
Yeah, have you heard? Did you know that, Hirgon? You might not. No, I like that. I mean, Théoden presses Hirgon. Doesn't Denethor know more than you're asking here? I mean, open your eyes, man. Clearly, we're already at war and nearly prepared to come.
Yeah, I mean, if this had truly been the first notice, Minas Tirith would have been doomed.
Yeah, can you imagine? Théoden just sitting there totally oblivious, hanging out in Medjugorje. His people are nowhere near ready. How do you even get the word out quickly enough?
Yeah, exactly. But, he points out we're already mustering for battle, thanks in large part to Gandalf.
That's right. Now, Hirgon can't say what Denethor knows or doesn't know, and Hirgon himself almost certainly doesn't know what Denethor knows. But we know, as the readers, especially those of us who've read multiple times, we know that Denethor always knows more than he lets on, right? I mean, the Palantir has likely revealed some information that is not being presented in his request for support.
Yeah. Yep. But Hirgon goes on to repeat the seriousness of the need. It is desperate. Mm-hmm. There's no command here, only a begging to remember old friendships and oaths.
And oaths. Let's not forget how important oaths are in Middle-earth. So, no command, but don't forget you did swear an oath.
Right.
Hirgon provides a bit of a broader news report. I like this. News from Middle-earth, from the north, from the south, right?
Yes, exactly.
It sort of shows the level of desperation, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, many kings are riding from the east in support of Sauron. There's rumor of war and skirmishes to the north. And in the south, the Harrowdale are coming, which is keeping their strength down as the coastlands are providing their own defense.
Yeah. I mean, remember when we were in Minas Tirith with Pippin talking with Baragond, what was the phrase? I think something about they're only sending a tithe of their strength. 1/10, because they have to keep the rest back just to defend against the Harrowdale. Yeah. My goodness. So then, Hirgon concludes with a really strong argument. Hurry, because it is on the Pelennor that the fate of this age is going to be decided. And if Sauron wins, nothing's going to stop him from rolling over all of Rohan, including this very place, including the hold itself.
Yep. So that classic argument of, if you don't come and help us, it's all over for you anyway, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Now, Théoden has at least, in the part we didn't read, Théoden has at least guessed some of this, and how much Gandalf has told him explicitly, we don't really know.
Right.
But he replies, even if we weren't in danger, we would come to help Denethor.
Oh, yeah.
but we have to think. We've lost much of our strength fighting Saruman, and your news just reminds us that we have to consider enemies from the north and the east.
That's true. That's true. This is a really pressure-filled moment for Théoden, right? I mean, he's in a situation where he has to decide how much of his forces to commit, how much to leave behind, and when to send them, right? Do we keep waiting for those extra, 100 troops, 500 troops? How long do we wait? If we wait too long, it's totally pointless. If we go too soon, maybe we don't have the forces we need. It's a tough spot, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's in a difficult position now because he's just been told how dire the situation is from all sides, essentially. Well, maybe not the West, but the North, the South, and the East.
Right.
And at the same time being asked, to come to the aid. And I also want to point out, Théoden's response that even if we weren't in danger, we would come to Denethor.
Yeah.
If Rohan itself felt no peril, still we would come to his aid is the line
that is a great way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even if Rohan itself felt no peril. Yeah, I mean, they take the oath seriously. They take the alliance seriously. It makes a lot of sense. But man, it is a tough spot for him to be in, balancing this. Well, as we see, he will keep back some forces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll read that, I guess, or I'll be reading that here as we pick up the last reading for tonight's discussion.
Yeah.
But we will speak no longer counsels of prudence. We will come. The weapon take was set for the morrow. When all is ordered, we will set out. 10,000 spears I might have sent riding over the plain to the dismay of your foes. It will be less now, I fear, for I will not leave my strongholds all unguarded. Yet 6,000 at the least shall ride behind me. For say to Denethor that in this hour the king of the Mark himself will come down to the land of Gondor, though maybe he will not ride back. But it is a long road, and man and beast must reach the end with strength to fight. A week it may be from tomorrow's morn ere you hear the cry of the sons of Éowyn coming from the north. A week, said Harrowdale. If it must be so, it must. But you are like to find only ruined walls in 7 days from now, unless other help unlooked for comes. Still you may at the least disturb the orcs and swarthy men from their feasting in the White Tower. At the least we will do that, said Théoden. But I myself am new come from battle and long journey, and I will now go to rest. Tarry here this night, then you shall look on the Muster of Rohan and ride away the gladder for the sight, and the swifter for the rest. In the morning, counsels are best, and night changes many thoughts. With that the king stood up, and they all rose. Go now each to your rest, he said, and sleep well. And you, Master Meriadoc, I need no more tonight, but be ready to my call as soon as the sun is risen. I will be ready, said Mary, even if you bid me ride with you on the paths of the dead. Speak not words of omen, said the king, for there may be more roads than one that could bear that name. But I did not say that I would bid you ride with me on any road. Good night. Ooh.
Wow.
Well, we'll get to that, but that's a little bit of a teaser, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. But coming back to the start of that, despite all his concerns and questions, Théoden does what he believes needs to be done right here. No more being prudent. We will come.
Decision made. Exactly. But then he gives some specifics, or at least the guidelines of some specifics, right? He first talks about the weapon take is tomorrow. And for a little philology fair on weapon take, by the way, go back just a few episodes to episode 270 for a great philology fair on that word. But when everything is set, we're going to head out. But this is where he decides he can't send all of his forces, right? It could have been up to 10,000 spears, but it's going to be less. We have to maintain some level of protection here at home. And so not everybody's going to come.
Yep. But at least 6,000 will go with Théoden.
Yeah.
He says, will come with me. Yes, that includes me. I will come myself, even if I don't ride back.
Yeah, another one of those foreboding moments, isn't it?
Yes, very much so. It's a long ride, and we can't go all out, or we won't be strong enough to fight when we arrive.
Yeah.
So it may be a week from tomorrow morning before we arrive.
Now, that would be March 17th, and Harrowdale would be just about right if that were the case. Fortunately, they arrived 2 days earlier than that on March 15th. One reason they can go faster, we're going to actually see in next week's episode, and it's the Dawnless Day. That leads Théoden to conclude, at least there is no longer need for hiding. We will ride the straight way and the open road and with all our speed. That definitely changes things. Isn't that interesting that Sauron's attempt to cause despair and to give a little maybe cover for his orcs who aren't necessarily fans of the sun actually enable the riders of Rohan to arrive 2 days earlier than they might have, thus saving the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the ultimate self goal, it's the ultimate own goal.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Now, the news that it might be a week does not reassure Harrowdale.
Oh, no, it doesn't.
Right? As you said, he believes that if it takes that long, the defeat of Minas Tirith will be long accomplished.
I love his little way of saying it too. Well, at least maybe you might disturb them from feasting in the White Tower.
Right.
And Théoden doesn't say, fine, we'll get there faster. He goes, yep, at the least we'll do that. He just takes it in stride. And really, it's because he's done with the conversation, right? Théoden wraps up the conversation. I'm going to rest, and you should do the same.
Right. After all, you'll have more hope if you see our forces in the morning, and you'll be rested, so you'll ride faster.
He's not wrong. I mean, obviously, it's going to make him feel just a little bit more hopeful to see thousands and thousands of spearmen on horseback ready to ride.
Exactly.
And he and his horse will move much quicker in the morning once they're rested. I also love this little piece of wisdom, and I want to discuss it for a minute or two. In the morning, counsels are best, and night changes many thoughts. What's your initial take on that?
Well, I think it's just that hesitation. Your mind can kind of run away with you at night. I'm sure we've all experienced this.
Yeah.
Just sort of lying in bed, changing it. Did I make the right decision? Will I really do what I said I'd do when in the morning and all that sort of stuff?
When you wake up in the middle of the night, you're absolutely right. Your mind just sort of goes in a million different directions.
Yeah.
The Hour of the Wolf. Did you ever?
Yes.
It's a Bab 5 reference. Do you watch Bab 5?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Ivanova and the Hour of the Wolf. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Yeah. I think, the whole idea is that in the morning when we're fresh after a night's rest, we're going to think more clearly. We're going to make better decisions.
Yep.
And we're going to have more wisdom. We're not going to be as distracted or as maybe impacted by the circumstances. I don't know.
Yeah, I think despair is at a greater level at night as well. So
that's true too, for sure.
You're less likely to make decisions out of fear in the morning.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think so. We've talked before. In fact, I think I'm trying to remember exactly when. I think I was going to write a P5 on this, and then we ended up changing the topic. But dawn is ever the hope of men, right? I mean, that's something that Aragorn said at Helm's Deep, and I think that's significant here. It's dawn that's going to give Hirgon some hope. It's dawn that's going to give Théoden some hope.
Yep.
And obviously brighter counsel as well. So good stuff.
Yep. Day will come. As he stands, they all stand, as one does.
Well, he is the king.
He's the king. And Théoden tells them all to go get their rest. He dismisses Merry from his service for the evening, but reminds him to be ready to come at sunrise.
Can it be an hour after sunrise, King? I mean, really, I'm a hobbit. I like to
time
sleep
for
in.
breakfast, and plenty of time for breakfast as well.
Exactly. I need breakfast. Well, no, Merry assures him, look, I'm going to be ready no matter where you call me to go, including the paths of the dead. Which is
quite an extreme thing to say, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he now knows the full story. Yeah, he's like, whatever it takes, man, wherever you want to go. Théoden's like, hey, it's not what I said. And second, there are a lot of roads that could bear that name now, right? I mean, so many roads lead to death. And certainly the road to the east heading to Minas Tirith is going to be a road that, well, for Théoden, does in fact lead to death. Yeah. And the paths of the dead. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah.
But he makes it clear that he hasn't asked Merry to ride with him on any road.
No. Yeah, by the way.
I thought that must leave Merry in some distress, right? As you will see next week.
A little bit of a cliffhanger here for Merry that we're ending this particular reading on. True. Now, Merry will be ready for Théoden's call as soon as the sun rises. You know who's never ready for a sunrise call? Yeah, it'd be Barliman. What does Barliman have in the mailbag for us tonight, James?
Okay, Sarah S. writes in asking, my question is about a comment that Éowyn makes when she's explaining about the dead men of the Dwemerberg to Merry while they are still in Dunharrow. She says that the people of Harrowdale say that a great host in strange array passed by a little while ago. Now, this couldn't be Aragorn's group because she also says that whence they came none knew. But I'd always imagined that the dead men that Aragorn summoned were all in the mountains and in and around the paths of the dead. The paths of the dead, sorry.
Right.
But this makes me think that there might have been more than one group that lived in other areas. What do you think?
Wow, that is a good question. I mean, I know that Dawn and I speculated back in the last chapter about whether maybe some of the dead refused this chance to make good on their oath. They'd rather spend eternity as wandering ghosts than help a descendant of Isildur. But we never thought about whether some of the dead just never showed up for the opportunity. Maybe some were on vacation in Lebanon. I don't know. They were off at the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Yes.
They're riding in that thing and they get to see
elevator.
The ghost sitting between them.
Oh, yes. The mirror with the glass.
Look, there's a dead guy between his dead guys. Isn't that funny? I love that idea, by the way. That's hilarious. Truth is, I think that if there even is an answer, and I'm not sure there is one, but if there is, I think it's contained in Théoden's explanation in the paragraph right before the quote that Sarah is referencing. He says that at whiles they may be seen passing out of the door like shadows and down the stony road. But then he adds that it's a rare occurrence. They come seldom forth and only at times of great unquiet and coming death. I think that tells us that none of the dead actually live. And by the way, Sarah used quotes around more than one group that lived in other areas. Yep. Great use of air quotes there, Sarah. None of the dead actually live someplace else. They just wander about during times like this, times that are unsettled, times that are filled with death. So when Éowyn says that folks saw a host in strange array heading up the road and into the hill, they really were keeping a tryst. These would have been those of the dead who came out at times of great unquiet. They were going back because perhaps they knew or had some sort of, ghostly premonition that something important was coming.
Can go two ways with this. One is that it's this idea that, yes, it was a rare occurrence, but these are unusual times. And this is a sign of the unusual times that this is actually happening. So I think that's likely, but I don't want to actually dismiss the idea that it could be Aragorn's group.
I know. I thought that at first as well. Like, okay, strange array.
Yeah, just because they don't know whence they came, none knew. That doesn't mean that it's not Aragorn's group.
That's a good point. Éowyn didn't see this group. You're right. See, Éowyn is only reporting what the people of Harrowdale said.
And do we have any indication that they wouldn't know what they looked like? So I wouldn't rule out the possibility it is actually Aragorn's group.
That is an interesting thought. What about the timeline, right? So they would have gone up. They went in the morning and they went, well, of course, they went from the hold, right? They spent the night in the hold before they went into the paths. So they would have gone up. The people in Harrowdale not in Harrowdale, but in the hamlets, right? So the people in Underharrow and Upbourne, who would have been the ones telling Éowyn this, they would have seen the group going down Harrowdale and then up the road to the hold. That's a very good point, because she says specifically, in the moonless nights but little while ago, a great host in strange array passed by. They went up the stony road and vanished into the hill. Well, that part, I guess it depends, right? If they vanished into the hill, if they watched these people disappear into the Dimholt, then that would rule out Aragorn and his people, because that would have been at night, and we know that they went into the hill in the morning. But if we're talking about just ascending the road and up into the hold, which, I mean, let's be honest, the people down at the valley floor aren't going to be able to see what happens once they cross into the hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make a point. It's not entirely impossible for it to be.
No, I'm not convinced it is, but I don't want to rule it out entirely.
No. They would have been in strange array. They would have been a great host. So that certainly fits. Yeah. And it was but little while ago, and they would have gone up the stony road. The only question is about the vanishing into the hill bit. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point. You're right. You can't really rule that out, can you?
Yeah. Anyway, something to
we could go either way. So if it's the ghosts, This isn't evidence that they live someplace else. It's evidence that they have come out during these unquiet times and are going back because they believe something important is going to happen. They have some sort of sense of that.
Yeah.
Remember well, you may not know this, but when Don and I talked about this whole section in the last chapter, The Passing of the Great Company, we talked about one of the early drafts of the story where these dead men would often go to the Stone of Erech and cry out that they want to fulfill their oath. They want rest. Mm-hmm. And so there's, maybe the idea in play here of wandering around because of the death and unquiet, but then coming back because they want to try to fulfill their oath.
Yes.
So that's option A. Option B is, maybe it's Aragorn and his guys.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
Do we have time for one more, Alan?
Yeah, we do. Shannan C. writes with a question that certainly speaks to me. He says, I am a landscape photographer based in Middle-earth, South Island of New Zealand. Okay, first of all, I'm officially very, very jealous. I haven't done a lot of landscape photography lately because I'm so busy, but I love doing it. And I can't imagine being based on the South Island of New Zealand. I mean, best place ever to be a landscape photographer. Going back to what Shannan says, he says, and my images are deeply inspired by Tolkien's work. I use Tolkien's descriptions of the landscape and artworks of John Howe, Alan Lee, and Tolkien himself to fuel the creative processes of capturing and processing images. I was wondering if you could suggest any specific chapters or books like Karen Wynne Fonstad's Atlas of Middle-earth that stood out to you both as containing any particularly rich descriptions of the landscape within Tolkien's world. I do find that these descriptions are wonderfully done throughout all of Tolkien's work, but wondered if there were any that stood out to you guys. James, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to mind is the chapter we're reading now. Of course, it's got some gorgeous descriptions.
Of Harrowdale. You're not kidding.
And this is a really difficult question for me to answer because there's so many things to choose from.
There are. It's true.
I'm almost going to go a completely different direction and not even. The question asks about books, but I'm also going to suggest potentially other sources of inspiration.
Okay. Please do.
Namely, Lotro would be one thing I would definitely consider as inspiration.
Definitely. Yeah.
And the other thing I want to mention is Artecraft, which is this phenomenal effort to build Middle-earth
in Minecraft,
but done with stunning accuracy.
I have seen some videos of that. That is fantastic.
To both the text. So they're spending an inordinate amount of time. I mean, think what Jordan is doing for the soundscape.
Yeah.
But applying it to placing blocks in Minecraft. That sort of attention to detail about the text.
Yes.
But also they're doing a lot of work relating to sort of geological and botanical realism as well. They're bringing in botanists and bringing in geomorphologists and everything to make sure
that is awesome.
That the watersheds work amongst the river systems and everything. It's phenomenal. I would definitely look to that as I know it's not exactly what was being asked, but that would definitely be a place I would look for inspiration.
I love that. I'm not as familiar with Artecraft. I've seen a few screenshots and a few very short videos, and I've always been impressed, but I've never dived deep into that. I'm going to have to look into that. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Lotro, though, what a great idea. I had not even thought about Lotro, but it absolutely is that. I mean, it provides a ton of inspiration.
Yeah.
If Shannon's looking at the works of John Howe, Alan Lee, and of course Tolkien himself, add Lotro to that list, as well as maybe some other visual artists. I know that the Tolkien calendar next year for 2023 has something like, half a dozen new or four or five new artists in the calendar. Not new. They're not new artists, but they're new to the major published world of Tolkien.
Yes,
art.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I can't wait for that. So that might be another thing to look at.
Including Emily Austin.
Including Emily, who's doing the cover for our book. I'm so excited about that. The entire artwork for our book. Well, Shannan, first let me say that one of the reasons I picked your question was because, as James mentioned, of the gorgeous landscape descriptions in this chapter. Granted, much of it was in last week's episode, but this stunning alpine valley would be a joy to shoot, wouldn't it? Now, the other reason I picked this is because your work is truly impressive. So, folks, I strongly encourage you to check out Shann's work at wherethecrowflies.com or look up Shannan Crow, that's SHANNAN _ CROW on Instagram for even more good stuff. We're going to include links in the show notes, but definitely check that out. Okay, that said, I definitely want to second James's suggestions for Lotro and Artocraft, especially Lotro, just because I'm more familiar with it. And though I know you said you've used John Howe's artworks as a source of inspiration, what about reading the text in his recent book, A Middle-earth Traveler? I think that could be another good source. I would also add John Garth's The Worlds of J.R.R. Tolkien for sure, not just for visual inspiration, but for Garth's descriptive text and his ability to connect real-world places where you can get plenty of images of those real-world places to Tolkien's writing. So a couple of really good resources, hopefully.
I love that suggestion of John Garth's book, because he does such a good job of, sort of really deep scholarship around what the actual inspirations were. Maybe not necessarily what the tourist boards want you to think were the inspirations.
Yeah, but, not necessarily where the blue plaques are.
Well, the blue plaques are not too bad. But
no, actually, you're right. They're not. The blue plaques are accurate. It's every council that wants to claim Tolkien was inspired by this or that. Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah.
My goodness. Absolutely true. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But be sure to join us again next week when, Théoden tries to give Merry his pink slip.
Yep, goes just about as well as telling Éowyn to stay behind.
That's about right. Yep.
Folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP, editor Jordan Rennells, Barleyman Becca Davis, along with our team of research assistants, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
Now, speaking of the website, please be sure to give us a visit there at theprancingponypodcast.com. We've got show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony Ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
You'll also want to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast is first and foremost a podcast about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. The PPP gets a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
Indeed, we do. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'm going to start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, Kathy from North Carolina, Lori from Washington, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, and Erwin from the Netherlands.
There's also Dylan in Australia, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, Zaksu in Illinois, Jim in Maryland, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, June in Ireland, Joshua in Massachusetts, James in Florida, Lucy in Texas, Connor in North Carolina, Keith in Alabama, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, and James in Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed, thank you very much.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, most of all your strength and all your speed to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want your voice literally heard, just send us audio of your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure to still email the question to Barleyman. Even though Barleyman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
fare you well while you may. Go with the goodwill of all good men.